Écoutez tout de suite une
In the meanwhile, we're going to hear a video from David Sassoli from the European Parliament, who is going to talk about the different challenges that we are all facing today with this worldwide pandemic all around the Mediterranean basin also, and also he's going to talk about how we can cooperate within Europe. Hello, everybody. I would like to thank the South region for their invitation to this fourth edition of this event. In last July, we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Barcelona process, and by transforming the Euro-Mediterranean region and constructing a common area of peace and stability, but also economic partnerships, social partnerships and human partnerships, which allow for essential cooperation in this space that we all share between the shores of the Mediterranean. The COVID-19 crisis has had an unprecedented impact on our health systems, our economies, our lives, and the COVID-19 has The interpreter apologizes. She has lost the speaker on the screen and cannot read what is being said. The voice of the interpreter cannot, the voice of the speaker cannot be heard either. Because the Mediterranean continues to be the theatre of many problems, other countries trying to join Europe. Let's not forget climate change, another scourge that has affected many Mediterranean countries, scarcity of water, uncontrolled urban growth and unprecedented pollution, making the Mediterranean basin one of the macro regions which is the most under threat because of environmental problems. However, there are many challenges to face, but we have opportunities to grasp also. The European Union has launched several initiatives to try and support Mediterranean partners, both in terms of health safety and in terms of relaunching society and the economy to encourage a transition towards a greener future. The European Parliament has committed to cooperate with the Mediterranean basin also thanks to works of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Union for the Mediterranean to offer a forum for discussion, which gives us an opportunity to work closely with national parliaments. Our mission with our partners is to promote dialogue and commercial exchanges, to foster the integration and cooperation between all of our societies at all levels. Because civil society is the driver of the European project. So thank you to all, and I hope you have a good conference. So we have heard, we're now going to hear Stella Kyriadis going to talk to us about our health systems and our way of living together. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, for much of our history, the Mediterranean has been a major crossroads of the world, and it has connected nations and peoples. This region, which I'm proud to call home, was the cradle of Western civilization and the birthplace of so much philosophy, science, and art. The Mediterranean Sea has carried wisdom, expertise, and learning between societies and cultures, helping them to grow and prosper. Indeed, it was a Spanish philosopher, George Santayana, who said that those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us some harsh lessons. It has reminded us very clearly of the foundational importance of our health, which is a prerequisite for more equal and more sustainable societies. This crisis has also shown us how fragile our societies are and how quickly they can be upended. It has amplified existing vulnerabilities in our health systems and in our preparedness and response to pandemics. And perhaps most powerfully of all, it has highlighted the value of collaboration. So I'm delighted to join you today. And let me say at the outset that I wholeheartedly endorse your question. How do we face pandemics together? Because we cannot face them alone. 2,500 years ago, the historian Thucydides, in his account of the Great Plague of Athens, pointed out that the social effects of epidemics can be at least as important as their biological impact. Action on pandemics, therefore, needed to address social factors, hygiene, and prevention. These lessons were reiterated in the 19th century by Villermé in France and Virchow in Germany, who added science, data collection, and epidemiology to the three ancient pillars. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to heed the lessons from the distant past, from the more recent past, and from the past year. We must address the weaknesses in our health systems and in our preparedness and response capacities. Otherwise, I'm afraid the history will repeat itself. This is why the European Commission has proposed a comprehensive package of initiatives to strengthen these structural vulnerabilities. We are working to build a genuine European health union that is better prepared, more coordinated, more responsive to cross-border health threats and public health emergencies. We are making sure that our two agencies, who have been at the forefront of our work, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control and the European Medicines Agency, have the capacity and mandate they need for today's world. And we will propose to set up an EU Health Emergency Response Authority. This will identify the critical equipment, medicines, and measures that are needed and ensure that this can be stockpiled or obtained at short notice in the event of a pandemic. Together, these measures will increase our resilience to cross-border health threats, starting with the COVID-19 crisis. Let me finish by returning to your question. How do we face pandemics? COVID-19 has challenged us all, but it is also bringing out the best of humanity. Neighbors are supporting each other. Health professionals and frontline workers are making incredible sacrifices, and global cooperation has surged. Never before have so many of the world's scientists focused so urgently on a single issue. Remember, this virus does not stop at borders. This is a global effort that requires global partners. The EU is determined to do its part, and we will continue to support member states and global partners in their response. The coronavirus global response launched by President von der Leyen is the global action for universal access to affordable coronavirus vaccination, treatment and testing. It has raised close to 16 billion euro in pledges. So, the answer to your question is, we face pandemics through science, solidarity, and multilateralism. We focus first and foremost on the most vulnerable among us. We act decisively now, but we also learn and plan for the future. We take concrete steps to tackle structural weaknesses in our health systems and to improve our preparedness and response capacity. And we do it together, because no one is safe until everyone is safe.
Alors, apparemment, nous avons pu nous reconnecter avec Barcelone. Donc, je repars vers vous, Excellence, Monsieur Nasser Kamal, le secrétaire général de l'Union pour la Méditerranée, et je vous repasse la parole.
Merci. Nous a précipités dans une crise sans précédent.
So we are in an unprecedented crisis. Each month of lockdown gives us a decline of 2% of GDP throughout the world. And the economic impact will be worse than the 2008 recession. I will not speak of the health aspects, but rather the economic, social, and environmental aspects. I should say that the pandemic has revealed the socio-economic inequalities, and the fragility of our regions has worsened. The levels of infection have increased among those due to their limited means did not have the possibility to self-isolate. the pressure on the health system has reduced economic means that could have been reinvested in other sectors, in particular the mitigation of climate change. There is now a vicious circle. Violence against women has increased. Climate change also accentuates inequalities and aggravates it, as studies show that environmental deterioration is exacerbated by lack of resources. We must build a common response to these challenges. We have always striven to implement an integrated approach, and we encourage discussion amongst experts. So the climate, energy security, the economy, and health are all related. All sectors count. We are trying to fight against health insecurity, a lack of water, the impact of climate change, the extension of zones prone to infectious disease, problem with the health sector, air pollution, and the cross-contamination of our ecosystem. The regional organization tries to bring together countries from north and south of the Mediterranean. And as such, we must develop a specific approach. We wish to transform the policies. Since the beginning of the pandemics, we've done this in particular in two main areas, the socio-economic sector and the environmental sector. The pandemic has relaunched the debate on the need to rethink our economic model by relocating some of the supply chains to bring them closer to the countries of destination. Mediterranean is one of the most economically fragmented regions of the world. Most of the trade zones are concentrated among European countries. Only 9% is in the south. And trade in the south represents only 1%. It is unacceptable. A better proximity of supply chains is an essential link for regional integration in the Mediterranean, which is at the heart of our mandate in the Union for the Mediterranean. This is why we associate all of the partners in all sectors to evaluate the progress of regional integration and explore possible avenues to improve regional supply chain in order to work better in the future. Our ministers of trade met last week and they agreed to develop a certain number of trials to certify and use the creation of value chains in a more appropriate manner. So, in particular for SMEs. In the UPM, we are concentrating efforts in the sector of the social and solidarity economy, with 3.2 million companies working in this sector. And the low would be 48. It is a key sector to create sustainable employment and generate economic growth that is inclusive within the region. We have also succeeded in launching a program to subsidize projects that allow us to create jobs in the Mediterranean. Ladies and gentlemen, The Union for the Mediterranean has also been working on climate change. We consider that pandemics are part of the problem of climate change. Our Mediterranean basin enjoys an exceptional diversity, and we have 18% of the marine species. And there is a natural tenacity, but which is today coming up against its limits. The concentration of economic activities and a dependence on agriculture come together to make climate change a real problem. In past decades, the question of the sea, pollution in the sea and the atmosphere have increased. Sea levels are rising. And there is a faster acidification of water. The megapoles of the Mediterranean will probably be flooded if we don't act. 250 million people will lack water, and a tremendous number of people will depend on emergency aid. We must draw lessons from the pandemic. The primacy of science and the importance of remaining united. The primacy of science, first of all. We support this in the UPM. We support the publication through the MEDEC network that brings together hundreds of scientists. And we have publications that are fruit of several years of work, which represent a mass of knowledge that is very impressive on the impact of climate change in our region. And unfortunately, this report shows us that 94% of primary and secondary pollution come from human activity, and in particular our choices in terms of heating, transport, energy sources. This report, above all, puts forward a key message for our governments, organizations, both on the north and southern shores of the Mediterranean. We cannot deal with this alone, given the scale of the impact. Therefore, we will continue our regional cooperation in order to try to reverse the climate change. Last June, we organized a climate week with representatives of all member states, the authorities, civil society, to talk about questions related to climate in the Mediterranean. We also worked to give the private sector more space to create investment funds in the scope of waste management or renewable energies. And this is very important because working in this in the green or blue economy should be profitable. All of these questions will be broached by our members during the next ministerial meeting of the European for the Mediterranean on the environment and climate change, which will be taking place next year in Egypt in March. Ladies and gentlemen, the status quo is fragile. We must act together. Because the consequences are dramatic and no doubt irreversible if we do not take action. We must promote the local, regional level as driving forces of sustainable growth. We must allow the Mediterranean society to develop their full potential. The pandemic is no doubt one of the largest crises that we have ever had to face in the past century, but it is a call for union to show that the construction is no longer possible if we don't work together, because the virus is increasing, the political tension is rife, and there is social strife, which is increasingly present. We therefore have the joint responsibility to answer the expectations of our citizens. And we shall do so immediately. Thank you very much. So I'd like to come back to you, President Muselier, to close this opening session, because I would like to ask you to say a word about what we've heard today. The public health systems are at peril, but above all, living together in solidarity, which is an even more urgent question in the Mediterranean basin. I would like to thank Nasser for the work he's doing. He is an observer, a player, and a mobilizer around the issues of the Mediterranean basin. We can see that Europeans are also attentive, and I would like to pay homage to those who spoke earlier. But quite concretely speaking, we have, and I saw this yesterday in the bilateral meeting that I had with all of the governors and all wallies around the Mediterranean, that we have the same problems. We have a problem of demography, water, waste, economic development, and democracy. We're all responsible in our territories that are more or less large for the respect of how our own countries operate. And we respect, of course, the sovereignty of the respective states, but we have the same problem among our youth in training. And this pandemic has brought us all together. We all talk with masks, we all have the same problem, and we're trying to deal with them as best we can, with ventilators if we have them or not, with tests or not when we have them in our countries, and with a scientific evolution that is very complicated. As for us as elected representatives, it's very difficult for us to know which are the right decisions to make, considering the scientific debate around the world. And so among the researchers in the Mediterranean basin, there is collective awareness and individual awareness, with collective and individual responsibilities, which is somewhat new. We put aside our individual egotism to act together. We realize that we can't solve things with a magic wand. Nothing is immediate. And once we've realized this, what about the future? The Mediterranean basin, and this is the meaning of this colloquium, 3 centuries after the plague, which decimated 40% of the population here in Marseille. So it's not the same scale at all. We're not talking about the same thing or the same stakes. But we can place things in perspective and say it's more than 92% of the people who die are above the age of 65 years old. So there's a phenomenon which means that our elders are far more fragile, of course, even though among the 8% there are also young people who die. And that's always a disaster for the young people and for families. And with this, I think that the governors, in order to be credible with regard to their populations, need to be very calm and always place things in perspective. I'm speaking under the control of Professor Rault. I'm also a physician. You don't have one patient that comes into your practice to whom you don't give a bit of hope that they might heal. You examine your patient, you do additional tests, and when they come out of your practice, their consultation, you give them hope so that they feel better. And this is the aim of the political person as well, except instead of doing it for one individual, we do it for an entire group of population. And this is what I reproach in particular with regard to what happened in France, and in particular the first wave, and I say this very clearly with our friends, deputies and mayors within the scope of the United Territories and president of the Association of Mayors of France. all of the messages that are alarming and create alarm without any outlook, without any perspective for hope. There is nothing worse, either for the patient or the population, within the scope of a choice, either of the doctor or with regard to a strategic vision. And so we have to carry messages that are responsible. We must be calm, never act immediately, because that's always a bad decision, and always gives them hope, and that's what's lacking.
And that's what we're going to see with all of our guests throughout the day. Thank you very much, Mr. Muselier and Professor Raoult, for being with us. Stay where you are, please. We'll be back in a couple of moments with our first round table to talk about the lessons that we can learn from the great pandemics of the past.